Oh, well.
We'll share,
Okay.
we'll share out the YouTube.
Yes, we will. All right. I guess it's time, y'all. Let's get going. Ooh. Hello. 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 Hi, Sheila. And well, that's all. I only see Sheila.
Yep.
Did Alfeo? We'd lost Alfeo.
He jumped.
Well, that's all right. I guess what I'm gonna boil this down to the fact that the time changed and people just are all at sixes and sevens, not knowing what time it is. And that's all right.
Yeah.
Welcome, 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 everybody, to Sorting Soup. We have an excellent program today. I'm excited. I hope people join us to see it. But the good thing is we will be sharing it. So I'm not worried. We are live streaming right now. So if you don't want your face on, it's a good time to turn off your video. All right. I do need the slides up though, so we can get started.
Okay.
I thought I was going to have to be tap dancing a lot longer. I'm super excited about today though. So it is a new season, a new soup, a new recipe, whole new stash of things to do this season. And we are excited to have everyone here. So next slide. We will be viewing and discussing Witches, Wars, and Rebels today by Teresa Lee. Next slide. And I am Cecilia. I'm a co-facilitator. We are missing a few people, as you can see, and we're even missing her poor picture because it wouldn't transfer, but I'll get that, dang it, I will. So we have, but we do have Laura with us today as our timekeeper, tech support, and chat monitor. She is doing triple, quadruple duty as awesomeness. We also have Bill, who is helping out as tech support. Guys, we will be the Zoom locked. What? Why is the Zoom locked? Uh-oh. What do you mean?
Maybe maybe the sound
Robin's having trouble getting on.
Yeah, I just got a call from her and didn't realize it was her.
that answers our question. Now let me see what is going on here.
Ruh-roh.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
I guess when I went to put the waiting room on, I locked the room.
Aha.
I hate
Okay.
it. I hate it when
Can you
my
hear me?
the problem is
I
me.
Yes.
can.
Yes, Sheila. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah,
Yep.
we hear.
I'm sorry, it logs me out because I tried to fix my mic. I also don't think you guys have heard me speak before.
I don't think so, but it's so nice. Hi.
Oh,
Okay, well, let me get started again. Now that we have people coming in, that I feel
I go back to the beginning.
No, it's just that
yeah, we should probably go back to the beginning. Now, I'm so sorry.
I said my friend was trying to get on and she says that it says it's locked on her end. It won't let
This
her
makes
in.
much more sense.
Yes.
Woo! I'm feeling a lot better now. Whew. Okay. Welcome. Y'all, I was worried. We had all of one person in here. I was like, uh-oh. Whew. Okay. It's all right. I'm so happy that you all are here. Welcome to Sorting Soup, the Ladle and Literature Society. We are here. Next slide. we are here we're so glad you're with us today. We're going to be viewing and discussing Witches, Whores, and Rebels by Teresa Lee. And as people come in and make their way in, next slide, I will introduce you to our crew. Now, granted, half of them aren't here today, but they will be back. So who we have here: Cecilia, co-facilitator; Laura G., timekeeper and tech support; and Bill, our main tech support. I think we might even have, oh, I don't know. We might even have our doctors at some point. So, but I will say, we will have a good crew for you. That is true, no matter what. And today we're going to be talking about some good things. Next slide. All right. So what is the Sorting Soup Book Club, the Ladle and Literature Society? Okay, this is a group space for collective viewing and analysis, emotional and analytical processing of difficult material. Basically, and then we turn all of that awareness, all of that learnedness, we turn all of that into action. We do that. We do stuff with everything that we learn, and so that you can take it back to your communities and actually see results. Now we have some group norms. We prefer that you raise your digital hand to contribute to the discussion. That is the heart at the bottom or on the side of your screen, or you can also contribute in the chat. Keep it civil and constructive, please. If you perceive a problem, propose a solution. No spamming in the chat, please. If you would once or twice, we've got it, I promise. Also, take breaks or step away if you need to. Some of the stuff that we cover is pretty heavy, and we understand that, but it's always good to take a moment and then come back. We'll be here, I promise. All right, next slide. So today we are in chapter 1 of the new book. Well, it's not a book, it's actually a video series, a 9-part video series, a feminist look at patriarchal capitalism and how to burn it down. And this chapter is the prelude to the hunt. So what we will be doing is we're going to be viewing that first chapter for the first 30 minutes or so, and then we will be discussing it and with figuring out some action items and whatnot. Then at the end, hopefully we'll have time for self-care, because self-care is radical resistance, y'all. But first, as always, we need to step into the bardo. And if you would, next slide, please. The bardo, if you've never been here before, is a space in between. It's in between from where you just stepped from and to where you're going. And that's where we are right now. We are collectively in a space in between, and we're always stepping from here to the next space. So what I'd like you to do is just take a quick moment just to take stock, sit, get comfortable, make sure you stretch out your spine, just however you can get comfortable, and breathe naturally. No need to change anything just yet. As we continue to allow people to come in, I'd like you to silently name what is present in your mind. Are you tired? Are you grieving? Is your mind buzzing? Imagine you are standing in a doorway between what just happened and what comes next. On each exhale, quietly say in your mind, This is the in-between. Begin a gentle rhythm. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts, feeling the belly and the ribs expand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 2. And exhale through your mouth for 3, 4, 5, 6, like a sigh. You can repeat this cycle. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 2. And exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. With each exhale, imagine releasing a layer of static, a layer of fear, or those shoulds that don't belong to you. You compare a phrase if it helps. Inhale, I arrive. Exhale, I let go. Let your breath return to a comfortable, natural rhythm and sense your whole body at once. The points of contact with the chair, the bed, the temperature of the air on your skin, and the sounds in the room or outside. And on each inhale, imagine drawing in support from your ancestors, from your comrades, and all who have crossed hard thresholds. All who are on this Zoom, all who are in this network, all who are with you. On each exhale, silently choose an intention for what comes next. I move with courage. I act from love, not fear. I bring my whole self. Finish by taking 1 deeper inhale, 1 long exhale, and gently open your eyes. Thank you all so much. Okay. So now I'm going to share my screen so that we can you hear that okay?
The bells of Salerno's cathedral rang softly through the humid summer air. Trota, who always rose before dawn, braided her hair and got dressed. Trota tucked her manuscripts into her leather pouch and made her way to the Scuola Medica Salernitana. After a few minutes of chatter and going back and forth over how infertility can sometimes be the fault of men as well as women, she politely excused herself. She was scheduled to lecture a group of students on women's health and did not want to be late. The subject, often dismissed by her male peers, women's health was a particular passion of Trota's. That day's topic was how to ease labor pains with herbs. That afternoon, a woman brought her daughter in to see Trota. She was pale, feverish, and suffering from something called obstructed menses. In Trota's world, obstructed or blocked menses was a common euphemism used for pregnancy. Given the fact that the patient presented with a fever, it's likely that she had had a miscarriage, but the fetal tissue hadn't yet left her body. Trota listened to the daughter's symptoms very carefully, felt her pulse, and prescribed the standard treatment, a warm infusion of rue and pennyroyal. She then spoke very kindly to the mother, assuring her that she had seen this condition many times before, and she believed that her daughter was likely to recover and resume her normal menstrual cycle. At sunset, Trota returned home, reviewed her physician notes for the day, and prepared additional notes for the next morning. She had a lecture to give the following day. The topic? How to surgically repair a perennial tear. The standard treatment for a miscarriage in 2025 is prescribing misoprostol to induce the process, or a DNC, a dilation and curettage, to remove the tissue surgically. Pennyroyal and rue are herbs that have been used in obstetrics for centuries. Their primary purpose? To end a pregnancy. When her patient presented with an incomplete miscarriage, Trota prescribed a chemical abortion. Now, I don't know if Trota ever had a patient encounter like that. It's likely she did, because she wrote several medical treatises on the treatment of women's health and obstetrics. Trota of Salerno was a physician and medical writer in, as evidenced by her name, Salerno, Italy. She lived during the 12th century. She practiced medicine and taught at the Scuola Medica Salernitana, the most prestigious medical school in medieval Europe, notable for its inclusion of female practitioners. English chronicler and Benedictine monk Orderic Vitales described her as wiser than the wise and more learned than doctors. She's the author of De Curis Mulierum on treatments for women, which was the most widely circulated medical guide on women's health at the time. Now, that patient scenario I gave you, I made it up. The woman is real. Her life was real. Her job was real. And the medical treatises she wrote were real. So I came up with that scenario to give you an idea of what kind of patient she would have seen. And lately, with the criminalization of abortion happening in the United States, we're seeing a lot of those kinds of cases. Women presenting with incomplete miscarriages. And we've known for centuries that the treatment for an incomplete miscarriage is an abortion.
Just real quick. Can you guys see that?
No,
No,
there's
we could
nothing
hear
there.
things, but
Ugh,
nothing was playing on the screen.
that's not right. Sorry, just a second. I don't know why that's happening. Can you see that?
Yep, I can.
How about that?
It's in
Same
small.
thing.
It's
Okay.
in-
Then we know it now. In May of 2022, Politico published a
Are we good?
You can probably make it a bigger screen, but
Right.
Oh, okay. That is bigger. That's me making it big on my screen, making it full screen on my screen.
okay, then don't worry about it. But is she reading or are you reading it?
She's reading.
Okay.
draft of majority opinion by Samuel Alito in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, which argued that Roe versus Wade had been wrongly decided and should be overturned. The leak, an unprecedented event in Supreme Court history, ignited immediate nationwide protests. Abortion rights activists warned the draft signaled a rollback of abortion rights, while Republicans largely condemned the leak as a breach of judicial protocol. A month later, the Supreme Court issues its decision overturning Roe versus Wade, stating that women had no constitutional right to terminate a pregnancy. Justice Alito's majority opinion very closely mirrored the leaked draft, declaring Roe egregiously wrong and returning abortion regulation to the states. This is an excerpt from the majority opinion. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the one on which the defenders of Roe and Casey now chiefly rely, the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. That provision has held to guarantee.
Okay. I'm having some issues today.
Rights that are not mentioned by the Constitution. But any such right must be deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition, and implicit were real. So I came up with that scenario to give you an idea of what kind of patient she would have seen. And lately, with the criminalization of abortion happening in the United States, we're seeing a lot of those kinds of cases. Women presenting with incomplete miscarriages. And we've known for centuries that the treatment for an incomplete miscarriage is an abortion. We knew it then, we know it now. In May of 2022, Politico published a leaked draft of majority opinion by Samuel Alito in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, which argued that Roe versus Wade had been wrongly decided and should be overturned. The leak, an unprecedented event in Supreme Court history, ignited immediate nationwide protests. Abortion rights activists warned the draft signaled a rollback of abortion rights, while Republicans largely condemned the leak as a breach of judicial protocol. A month later, the Supreme Court issues its decision overturning Roe versus Wade, stating that women had no constitutional right to terminate a pregnancy. Justice Alito's majority opinion very closely mirrored the leaked draft, declaring Roe egregiously wrong and returning abortion regulation to the states. This is an excerpt from the majority opinion. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the one on which the defenders of Roe and Casey now chiefly rely, the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. That provision has held to guarantee some rights that are not mentioned by the Constitution, but any such right must be deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition, and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. Until the latter part of the 20th century, such a right was entirely unknown in American law. Indeed, when the 14th Amendment was adopted, 3/4 of the states made abortion a crime at all stages of pregnancy. What's deeply rooted in our history and traditions is misogyny. And by the way, Justice Alito was wrong about the history of abortion too. Yes, abortion was controversial, rarely discussed, and not socially acceptable. But prior to the mid-19th century, perfectly legal until the 4th or 5th month. In the pre-colonial era, indigenous communities all across North America had long established knowledge of reproductive health care, including numerous herbal remedies used to end pregnancies. They've had remedies like this for thousands of years. These practices were part of a broader system of women's health, midwifery, and communal medicine that has existed for millennia and were not regarded as criminal, but as part of survival, bodily autonomy, and collective knowledge. In the colonial period and right into the early American Republic, abortion before quickening, the stage at which fetal movement is usually felt, again, usually around 4 to 5 months, was generally not considered a crime and was widely practiced by midwives and women themselves using various herbal methods. Abortion was understood as part of reproductive life, though regulated under English common law traditions that were imported into the colonies. In the early 19th century, however, physicians aligned with the emerging professional medical establishment organized through the American Medical Association after 1847 began campaigning against abortion. These doctors sought to wrest control of reproductive care from midwives and traditional female healers, portraying abortion as immoral, dangerous, and even unscientific. Their efforts coincided with broader anxieties about declining birth rates among white Protestant women and rising immigration, making abortion politics a site of racial and demographic anxiety. In 1829, New York was the first state to criminalize abortion entirely. Between the 1820s and the end of the 19th century, nearly every state had passed laws criminalizing abortion, often without exception, pushing the practice underground. But despite criminalization, abortion remained very common, and women continued to rely on clandestine networks of midwives, healers, and sympathetic doctors. By the early 20th century, abortion bans were firmly entrenched in U.S. law, forcing women into unsafe procedures and contributing to high rates of maternal mortality. These restrictions remained in place until the mid-20th century, when feminist activism, changing cultural attitudes towards sex and sexuality, and public concern over unsafe illegal abortions set the stage for challenges to state bans and ultimately leading to the 1973 Roe versus Wade decision that guaranteed the constitutional right to an abortion. So you see, abortion is deeply rooted in our nation's history and tradition. It wasn't necessary to formally recognize a right to it because it was so common and wasn't severely restricted. That is, until white Protestants got nervous about population decline and immigration. Sound familiar? The Republic had been in existence for 41 years before the first state law criminalizing abortion entirely was on the books. Up until then, abortion was regulated, but only targeted abortion after quickening, which was perfectly in line with English common law, if we're going by tradition. English common law being the framework framework on which our entire legal system is based. And so, Justice Alito, abortion was legally practiced in these United States at its inception. But since women weren't even an afterthought when men were drafting the US Constitution, how could our rights to anything be deeply rooted in our nation's history and traditions? But I'll tell you, it is deeply rooted in history and tradition. Ignoring patriarchal bullshit from men like you and doing what the fuck we want. Knowing that control of our own bodies is our natural right as women, and no one, not even you, Justice Alito, has a right to interfere with that. Resistance is deeply rooted in women's history and traditions, and not just in our nation. Women of every race, country, age, class, and ethnicity have resisted patriarchal control since its inception. That's what this series is about. The history of women and resistance in the economic transition that solidified the system that relies on our subjugation for its survival, capitalism. Now, because I live in the United States, European economic structures, particularly those of the English, as we are a former colony, have had the most influence on economic life here in the US. So in discussing the building of our current global economic system, I'm going to focus largely on Europe, because that is where the events occurred that set the stage for the economic hellscape that we're currently suffering through. So let's get started. Part 1, History enters the chat. Chapter 1, The Prelude to the Hunt. Unmarried women who deliberately chose lives outside of marriage were not uncommon in medieval Europe. This period, also referred to as the Middle Ages, lasted from about the 5th into the 15th centuries, so the period between the fall of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance, roughly. Overlapping that time frame was the early modern period that spanned from about the mid-15th century to the late 18th century, from about 1450 to 1789. Marking the transition from the medieval to the modern age. Cheapside was the main market in the heart of medieval London and was one of the largest areas of wealth in the city. Historians believe the market was built in the late 9th century during the reign of King Alfred the Great as part of an urban restoration project. And in 1287, one of the most lucrative stalls in Cheapside Market was owned and operated by a woman named Marjorie de Clare. Actually, Marjorie reportedly owned 3 shops, 2 houses, and was an importer of expensive French wine that was worth more than the average English noble made in a year. She did not want to, nor did she ever get married. Her situation wasn't unusual. Nearly a quarter of the property-owning merchants in London at that time were unmarried women. Unmarried women in medieval society held a specific legal category called femme sole, literally meaning woman alone. There was real power in that phrase. For a woman, marriage meant the legal erasure of your identity and the forfeiture of all of your property to your husband upon marriage. Meanwhile, a femme sole could sign contracts, sue in court, and own property outright. Agnes Sampson, a 14th century merchant, once wrote, "Marriage? I'd rather kiss a plague rat. My gold stays in my purse." These women traveled, studied, hosted salons, and kept vibrant social lives. And they came from every social class. And they didn't just build businesses, they built entire communities. Across Northern Europe, there were the Beguines, women who led lives of religious devotion without having to join a specific religious order. So they had the protection of the Catholic Church, but without all the rules of being a nun. These devout lay women created self-sustaining communities called beguinages that housed tens of thousands of women. By 1320, there were over 200,000 beguines throughout Europe. That's more than the populations of most of the cities at the time. The largest community was in Bruges, in Flanders. The beguinages were essentially feminist communes. They lived together, cared for each other, prayed and worked collectively, and proved that women could build an entire alternative society outside of a traditional family. By the year 1300, 60% of the cloth exported from that region came from their workshops. 60%. So when King Philip IV of France tried to get rid of them, the textile market collapsed and cloth production dropped by 40%, forcing him to back down and reverse course. Their domination of the textile trade, their schools and mutual aid systems, this was skilled labor powering an international economy. Many of these women were self-made. Jeanette Barral in Marseille had a bakery that supplied biscuits to the Royal Navy. Agnes Bugg ran a London brewery single-handedly. Rose of Burford pioneered international quality certifications in the wool trade. and was able to command premium prices because of it. These women didn't just trade goods, they shifted narratives and set the standards for these goods across international borders. Another path to female independence was widowhood. In Venice in the year 1400, widows controlled 35% of all private wealth. Alessandra Strozzi rescued her banking family from ruin and went head-to-head with the Medicis, the most powerful and wealthiest family in Florence, who dominated politics and culture in Tuscany from the 15th to the 18th century. Isabella de Fortes, Countess of Devon, refused marriage proposals from kings, declaring that she preferred the sweet wine of independence to the bitter bread of subjugation. These women weren't isolated. They pooled their resources. They shared market information and invented financial tools like installment payments and subscriptions. London Guild records from the 14th century refer to this sisterhood of commerce, an informal organization of female merchants who shared market information, provided each other with emergency loans when business was bad, and collectively negotiated better terms with suppliers. They had an organized business network. But all of this independence terrified men. Clergymen spoke out against these women. Lawyers wrote treatises declaring them a danger to society. Men weren't just afraid of individual women. They were starting to observe recurring patterns of female power that were spreading all over Europe. That's the through line. Medieval women proved what patriarchy still denies. Women have a history, a written history proving that women don't need men, that we can live full and independent lives on our own and in community together. This history is documented in the London Guild archives. Women built businesses and communities all on their own. Those beguinages in Belgium, those buildings are still there. 13 sites that once had beguinages still exist. And this wasn't limited to Europe. Women all over the world found ways to thrive independently of men. When women are allowed the same access to resources and freedom as men, we not only can compete with them, we can surpass them. Well, we can't have that, can we? Village life in the Middle Ages. Outside of the cities, there were a lot fewer opportunities for women to live independently of men. Feudalism was an economic system that dominated Europe between the 9th and 15th centuries. And it was built on three things: land, labor, and loyalty. At the top stood the monarch, claiming sovereignty over the realm. Beneath him, nobles and lords held estates granted to them by the king. These estates came with obligations. The vassals pledged loyalty and military service in return for land. The knights defended the lord or the noble's holdings, while the peasants and serfs cultivated the soil that sustained the entire order. And of course, at the bottom, supporting the whole thing, as always, were women. So it went in order of authority: kings, barons, knights, peasants, and then mostly women there on the bottom. For peasants, sometimes referred to as serfs, the manor was both a lifeline and a trap. They weren't enslaved, but they weren't technically free either. Bound to the land, they owed rents, labor, and obedience to their lord in exchange for a small plot of land and a little protection. The church sanctified all of this as God's will, while they extracted tithes of their own, making them one of the largest and wealthiest landowners in all of Europe. The church. Daily life revolved around the agricultural year, and women's labor was indispensable. They worked the fields, they brewed ale, spun and wove cloth, tended animals, managed gardens, and ran households. But the peasants weren't completely powerless. They had access to subsistence land plots and, of course, the commons. These were the forests, streams, and pastures which gave them an independent means of providing the necessities. And to protest their exploitation at the hands of the landlords, they did things like hid the landlord's harvested grain somewhere, poached fish or game off of his land. They bent the rules to protect and provide for their families. And women were at the center of these sometimes quiet and sometimes not so quiet protests. But of course, life wasn't just a big peasant sing-along. Villages were stratified. There were free peasants, serfs, and the landless poor. Women legally had fewer rights, barred from self-government, subordinated by the church, and micromanaged by the lords, who regulated their marriages and even their sex lives. The right of prima nocta was still a thing back in the day. That meant that the lord of the manor had the right to have sex with any woman who was subject to his authority, even on her own wedding night. Yes, lords had that right. Disgusting. Yet paradoxically, within feudalism, women sometimes had more leverage than they would later have under capitalism. Land was often allocated to families and not to individual men. Women not only worked directly on the land, but they could control the products of their labor, and their labor was more visible. When a peasant man got married, it was tradition for him to give the land back to the Lord, and the Lord would re-grant the land to both him and his new wife. Communal work like washing, spinning, childcare, and harvesting fostered solidarity and mutual protection. By the late Middle Ages, the cracks in the system began to appear. The Black Death destroyed 1/3 of the European population, which created labor shortages that empowered peasants to demand more pay and better working conditions. The lords doubled down. They piled on the rents, they increased the restrictions, but people continued to resist. In 1358, French peasants rose in what was called the Jacquerie, a violent peasant revolt that took place during the 100 Years' War. In 1381, English rebels marched on London, demanding an end to serfdom. In Germany, the Peasants' War of 1524 produced the 12 Articles, an early manifesto of human rights. People organizing, issuing demands, and trying to reshape the system from within, even as they risked annihilation. Yes, most of these peasant revolts were crushed, but their impact was cumulative. Serfdom began to decline all across Western Europe, but was replaced by tenant farming and wage labor. The sad part is, in fighting to be liberated from serfdom, what resulted is the same serfdom, just a rebranding of it. The new capitalist wage economy didn't free peasants or women. It just shackled them to wages instead of to lords and land. And it did so by fencing off their communal resources and forcing them to labor for others to survive. The infamous enclosures weren't just about land privatization. They were about stripping women of the small, but by no means insignificant amount of leverage they had carved out in the feudal world. The death of the commons. The commons is a term that refers to land or other resources used and managed by a community for their mutual benefit. For centuries, these commons, the forests, the fields, rivers, and meadows, were the lifeline of peasant survival. They were everything: fuel for fire, food, grazing for animals, raw materials for building. The commons, for most, were the difference between going hungry and making it through the winter. They were also havens for collective labor and solidarity, of which women were the backbone. The commons gave women fuel for their hearth, herbs for medicine, grazing for goats, and gardens to feed their families, and the communal networks that underpinned survival and sisterhood. These cannot be overvalued. The rooted knowledge, communal ties, and the quiet power of collective care. Then came the landlords, the merchants, and the proto-states who looked at all that abundance and thought, how can we steal that? Enter the enclosures. The term enclosure refers to a process where all of these publicly shared lands were fenced off and privatized. So they would do everything from literally erect fences, evict people off the land, a wholesale theft of communal life. There was a time throughout many places in the world when water was free. Just think about this. The absurdity that we have to pay for things that the earth naturally provides. When you really think about it, it's disgusting. Overnight, land that generations had shared suddenly became private property, with its crop yields repackaged as commodities and sold for profit. Theft was rebranded as progress, fencing off freedom in the name of agricultural efficiency. The enclosures are an example of what Karl Marx referred to as primitive accumulation. This is the brutal, unnatural process that ripped people from their land, their tools, and their communities to set the stage for capitalism. This wasn't the slow, peaceful evolution of markets like economists like Adam Smith like to imagine. Enclosures, conquest, slavery, and colonialism, it was theft by law and by force. It's what created the working class by destroying every other way of living. People became resources in a way that was different from the way it had been before. It's Marx's fancy way of saying capitalism didn't politely show up one day, shake hands, and ask everyone if they wanted to join. It was born through force and through theft. It is the violent historical process that separated people from the means of production, land, created a propertyless working class, the proletariat, who then had to sell their labor for wages to survive exclusively. Primitive accumulation. It's capitalism's starter kit. Peasants were denied access to communal land, communities and continents were looted. And with colonial expansion, enslaved people's bodies became the capital that built and sustained the system. This is the dirty origin story that capitalism doesn't put in its Tinder bio. It's how free markets were not really free, but were set up by first making sure most people had nothing, no way to live, except by selling their labor to the rich for whatever the rich decided to pay you. It's when resources were fenced off, commodified, and priced, laying the foundation for what Silvia Federici calls the patriarchy of the wage. It wasn't polite and it wasn't inevitable. It was deliberate, and it was a war on women. Because when the commons were enclosed, women lost access to the resources that had kept them less dependent on men, less dependent on their husbands, their fathers, and the lords. It stripped away what little autonomy they had, dismantled collective female labor, and shoved them into these small patriarchal households where their labor was invisible and devalued. But the peasants did not go quietly. Across Europe, they rioted, petitioned, they tore down fences with their bare hands, and women were always at the front of these struggles, refusing obedience, breaking the rules, setting fires, both literal and figurative. Even when rebellion wasn't possible, everyday acts of sabotage, as I mentioned before, foot dragging, poaching, false compliance, kept resistance alive. It took Europe about 2 centuries to fully train the workforce and get everyone on board with this wage economy. Peasants resisted fiercely. Sadly, though, over time, enclosures and a wage-based system won out, not as a natural evolution of feudalism, as conservative economists would have you believe, but as a counter-revolution engineered to crush peasant resistance. Wage labor didn't randomly replace feudal dues. It was imposed violently as a new system of control. The destruction of the commons heralded the destruction of the small amount of autonomy that women enjoyed. It paved the way for the nuclear family household, wage dependence, and the subordination of women's labor to the needs of capital. A similar pattern could be seen during the Reconstruction era in the United States. Free people were dispossessed of land or denied it to begin with. Violence and law teamed up to force them into low-wage labor and sharecropping. This is the playbook of the enclosures, the stripping of autonomy, the criminalization of independence, the fencing off of survival. It's global. And every time capitalism gets a little scared, every time workers, peasants have a little too much power, another process of primitive accumulation begins, and they just tighten the grip on all the working people. They just take more and more every time. Primitive accumulation is the brute force first step violence that's necessary to either build or strengthen a capitalist system. The outcome is always the same. The control of labor, and to obtain labor as cheaply as possible, is always the end game. That's what it's always about. That's what it's always been about. This is when we begin to see the proliferation of things like vagrancy laws, weaponized against European peasants, just like they did with newly freed slaves in the US, because everything old is new. It was illegal to be unemployed or wandering, as they called it, effectively criminalizing poverty. Before the enclosures, the concept of a welfare state or poorhouses didn't really exist. Yeah, each village and town had a few local beggars, but people would just give them some change, give them a loaf of bread, and send them on their way. It was only after the enclosures when mass poverty became a reality, and violence was the glue that held the entire system together. European peasants were slaughtered every time they protested. Any sign of resistance was met with intense violence. The enclosures criminalized the everyday activities that people had always done for basic standards of living. They criminalized survival. Gathering wood, theft. Grazing your goats, trespassing. The whole point was to drive people off the land and into wage labor, and force any women in the public sphere, independently making and selling goods in the marketplace and supplementing their family resources with resources from the commons, to push them out of the public sphere and into the private sphere, where they were primarily tasked with the reproduction of the labor force. So you see, the capitalism we know and hate today was born during this period. It didn't evolve naturally. It was imposed. It was deliberate. And it was imposed violently in order to crush peasant resistance. And to destroy that peasant resistance, they knew they had to destroy women, because women were the backbones of these communities.
Okay. I just want to thank y'all for your grace and hanging with me through all of those technical difficulties. I will figure out how to make it bigger next week. And this, I will say, buy the series. $9.99 gets you the entire videography and gets you into her Substack and gets you a PDF. It's a lot of information. It's worth the $9.99. Anyway, okay, so here we go to get started. Can you share the slides again, Laura? Just to keep us on track. So, just to keep us on track, what systems of power, and these don't have to be what we talk about again, they're just guidelines. What systems of power have shaped your understanding of the world? Where do you see resistance in your own life or ancestry? How have you benefited from or been harmed by patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism? What are you ready to unlearn? What are you ready to reclaim? And before we move on, next slide real quick. One thing that she does really well, she offers a glossary in that PDF, a glossary of terms so that we all understand what we are talking about. Because a lot of times, what you think is patriarchy might be different than what I think is patriarchy. But according to the definition that she is giving, it is a social system where men hold disproportionate power in households, workplaces, governments, and culture, and where masculinity is treated as the default or ideal. It survives by convincing women that submission is safety and obedience is love. And white supremacy, a system where white people as a group are considered inherently superior to people of other races, and that this superiority should shape how society is structured. It's the reason Black and brown people were enslaved, colonized, and policed, and why those structures still shape our lives to this day. Go back to the previous slide, Laura. Thank you. Just in case, but in case people wanted to see these, I would like now's the time for us to discuss. So if anyone would like to raise their hand and get us started, that would be, otherwise I'm just going to call on somebody. Who know? Oh, Laura, hey, go ahead.
Okay, well, I definitely saw a lot of problems with patriarchy in my family, my father, and I was always standing up to him on behalf of my 4 younger siblings. It was a little, well, I guess I did for myself too, but much more so as the eldest. I would stand up for them anytime he was not seeming to be fair to them. And he was upset and rather just because I'm your father, that type of thing. And the resistance in my own life was partially that, but also my sister Gail, who I have mentioned before, she's number 3 of the 5. Kind of my idol as far, oh, I didn't start the timer on myself. Sorry, y'all. I won't.
That's okay.
I forgot. She was into resistance and politics and union organizing and all that. And she's who I went to Springfield, Illinois with in 1982. One last hurrah for the ERA.
Oh,
Didn't work, but she basically taught me to question authority. One of my favorite buttons of all time, but always question authority. That's it. Thank you.
that's awesome. Thank you very much. Chris, you're up next. you can unmute yourself. I can help. There you go.
Okay. Do I need to, Chris Wolk from Green Lake, Wisconsin. I'll just put that in there.
Thank you.
Okay. My mother wanted so badly to go to college. My grandfather, she had a job. So my grandfather told, I guess even her guidance counselor came over and wanted him to let her go to college. He said no. She had a job. She never forgave him, but she made sure her daughters got an education. And it is my understanding from, and I mean, my dad's pretty, well, he had a lot of strong women in his family too, but there was never any question we were going to college.
Right.
That was the next thing after high school, done deal. So that's sort of where our family dynamics come in. And I've met some of this is a lot is cultural. I mean, my mother was disappointed because she had relatives, female relatives that were able to become doctors before my mother had graduated from high school, but my grandfather didn't care. You know, it was that German male thing. But okay, that's all I have to say right now.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you. Missouri, how are you
Hi there.
today?
Thank you for even sharing this. As many of you know, I'm used to be retired civil rights attorney, but my mother, born and raised in Chicago, left Alabama in her late 30s, right, rather, because women of all races, but particularly Black women, Black girls, were not supposed to get past an eighth grade education. Boys, including Black boys, which, was hard for me to understand, were able to go to high school at least for a couple of years, but girls could not get past the eighth grade. So my mother came to Chicago, one, because she wanted to do hair with Madam C.J. Walker, but she also wanted to go to evening schools because Chicago was noted for having evening classes for adults. And my Aunt Ruth, one of her my mother's sister out of 16 siblings, was the only one to get a high school education here in Chicago at Inglewood High School. So again, for me, and I should say on the shoulders of my mother with less than a ninth grade education, I have 3 degrees, including a law degree, and both my daughters have master's degrees. So what I can say is on the shoulder of a woman of resistance. She also had 4 husbands, and I'm not sure they were legal considering the law, but she used to say 2 of them died and 2 of them should have. So I don't know where my father fit in that, and I kind of let it go. But I consider myself blessed to be on the shoulders of a woman who was led by my grandmother, the child of freed slaves who had 17 children, 13 in the field. Um, it's on the shoulders of who we stand. And I think the woman doing this presentation is very eloquent in her discussion. But I think we also have to remember, like I do, Madam C.J. Walker, the first Black millionaire in this country, but also Ida B. Wells and others, and other women, who, Jane Addams, all those who stood for and on whose shoulders we stand today, because without them, we women would not be able to even listen to this historic information. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I completely agree. I when I think about resistance in my own family, I come from strong women. I'm sure y'all couldn't have figured that out. My mom and my grandma specifically, she built Boeing planes, and worked on every Democratic election she possibly could. She worked on John F. Kennedy's Democratic election. I have her little pin that she got to keep. And I, when I think about what she had to go through, she raised 7 kids by herself, basically, because her husband died. And I just think to myself, it was a different time, but she's so strong, so strong. And I feel her. I feel her strength inside me. And she taught me things, taught me how to stand up for myself, taught me how to be courageous in the face of of what we see every day. And I'm so thankful. Again, thank you, Miss Ori. You reminded me. Thank you. Melissa, Dr. Melissa, I'm glad you're here. You're up next.
Thanks. It's nice to be here. I feel like I come from a very feminist family, at least on my mother's side, and a very resistance-oriented family all the way along. And my great grandmother brought her family, including her husband, from Germany because she didn't want her sons to have to go to war. Because her husband, my great grandfather, had apparently been in a war and probably was deeply affected by it. And she was always apparently arguing with the minister of her church. And I have her Bible. My grandmother gave me her mother's Bible. Uh, so, and then my grandmother and I guess my grandfather, they were feminist and they kind of believed in the superiority of women, which maybe is not actually fair. But even my grandfather, apparently, he died when I was a year old, but apparently he had many problems, but one of them was not patriarchy exactly, though I'm sure everyone bought into it to an extent, but he thought women were superior to men also. And my grandmother really did not allow my grandfather's problems, which were alcoholism, womanizing, and gambling, to control her. And she just kept a very boundaried existence and hung out with her, wrote to her friends and her female friends. There was a lot of solidarity among women in those lives. At the same time, I have to say that, growing up in the time that I did post World War II, I did not know very many people who were not abused by their boyfriends or husbands. So that's just an unfortunate fact. I hate to be a downer about this, but
That's just terrifying. I mean, it's a terrifying reality that, and we can't, and again, what we need to normalize is we need to help the men. Like, we need to figure out why the abuse is happening and, stop the source. I mean, I can give you two guesses. At wartime, I bet you only need one. Sorry, Judith, you're up next.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I also want to talk about my family. I don't have such a feminist background, but I have like a repressed feminist background regarding my mother. During World War II, she worked in a munitions factory originally, and the ladies on duty there had to wear trousers and that was not common for women at the time. And my mother had a nice little shape, and so the men would make remarks, as she would walk by, and she was fed up with this one day. She stormed into the boss's office and told him that, people were harassing her, and they had no right to do that. And he really liked her spirit, and she had secretarial training and everything. And so he hired her as his executive secretary. And so she had a very good job during the war. And at the time that my father and she got married, she was earning more than he was. And I think this was part of the problem. Because he never wanted her to work outside the home once she had children, and she really, really wanted to, and she had a strong sense of self-worth, but she kind of capitulated to the system, and I never quite understood this. She would explain to my sister and me, that the woman is the heart of the household and the man is the head of the household. We were like, well, that's not fair, and it was clear that my mom was doing most of the heavy lifting, around the house, and we knew this wasn't fair, but she still kind of bought into that, even though she knew her own self-worth, and she was really unhappy. So I guess I internalized her anger. And, my father's reasons for doing that could be complicated too. His own mother was a widow with 9 children to support, who depended heavily on neighbors and friends and the church for extra help with things. Yeah. She was a seamstress. She made like wedding dresses for all the bridesmaids, and people had large weddings back then. She did okay. The family did okay, but maybe because his mother had to work so hard, he didn't want his wife to work hard. But I think not. I think it was just gender roles, deeply ingrained. Anyway, so that's my background: repressed feminism.
Well, that's an amazing background. And I agree. Like the same thing with my mom and my grandma. She was trying to be everything for them, and she had to rely heavily on the church. Even though they lived in a log cabin on Table Rock Lake, so they were kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So the church couldn't just drop by, but she made her kids go to church, because they were Catholic. So every Sunday, right? And I agree, it was a big part of helping her raise the kids. And she didn't actually get remarried until much, much later, and she had already raised the kids. So anyway, sorry, I don't need to yeah. Thanks, guys. Robin, you're up next.
Oh my God, it's a heavy stuff here. Women always suffering, right? But anyway, I come from family where education. Doesn't matter if it's males or females, but I noticed that male are dominant and they want more males than the females in the families. My grandfather was a heart surgeon in Second World War and he served in the army in the British, but he passed away with a sudden heart attack. And my mom was like maybe 10, 11 years old. She had to walk back. They had to walk back. My grandma was not educated and they had to walk back to India to their hometown. And my mom could not get, she wanted to be a doctor, and her dad was very supportive, but she couldn't do it. She taught English when she went back, and then she married my dad age of 17, 18, because that is, my grandma, she couldn't support her for the education. But anyway, that's some story. And my mom then later, she was born in Burma, so that's how she came to this country, and that's how we ended up. But my dad was very authoritarian, very authoritarian. Then my brothers were very authoritarian. The reason I got married, I wanted freedom, get out of Seattle. But I got my education, okay? I got my degree. That's where I met my Paul. And
Yes.
he gave me all the freedom, but indirectly, he controlled me, okay? Indirectly, everything he was, okay? But I came, like, now I'm just independent woman. I mean, I just can
Right.
do whatever I want. But still, I am I'm the one who doing everything in the house. They don't do anything. Men, they just sit around, watch game all day, and then they read a paper or do whatever. Okay, so that's my story. I do feel angry with that kind of part. So I'm hoping.
That does make me angry. Paul needs to help out.
Well, I did. I told him, I said, you eat over here and you need to vacuum over here. So
That's
he
right.
did. He vacuumed it. And
Oh,
then
well,
I told,
good.
so
If you tell a man to vacuum and it happens, ah, voila.
but he won't do it on his own. And he's the one who put the crumbs. I don't. So I'm constantly cleaning, and my daughter's here. She said, "Mom, you drive us crazy. You just she said, I'm sorry, Mom. You didn't marry a man who is at the same level as you are. You're way too fanatic when it comes to cleaning and all that stuff." That's
You
why
should just chill out. Just calm down.
I can't. I have to. I mean, I did, like I just constantly, when I cook, I have to my kitchen has to be spick and span here, and they come and they make mess. They just touch all my appliances and, so,
Okay.
but anyway, I gotta go. But anyway,
We'll talk more. We'll talk
yeah,
more. Okay. Okay. Hold on. Kathy, you're up next. You're unmuted though. Go ahead.
Hey,
Oh, there you went.
yeah, here I am. I have a logistical question first.
Sure.
On the PDF, I thought I was going to be reading along with what she was speaking,
No.
but it's okay, good, because I thought, where have I gone wrong?
No. The PDF is something, it's just extra. She offers you not just a glossary, but a bibliography of all of the
Right.
sources that she uses and other sources that she just recommends, in addition to a lot of other things. It's like almost 100 pages or more of information.
Yeah, it is. So that's why I thought I needed 2 iPads to read along.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that question last time, but I'm glad we've cleared that up.
Right. Okay.
You have
So
another question though?
back to your question. What systems of power have shaped your understanding of the world? In my family, women have become stronger throughout centuries. Not centuries. Yeah, through decades. My grandmother came over from France, married to my grandfather, who abandoned her. So she basically raised my mother and his sister. And then my mother was very controlling, and she divorced when I was 4. So throughout history, my family has been single moms. And we have learned that we have to be strong and we have to support ourselves. And I was married to like a really controlling, I didn't think he was controlling because I was 18 and in love. But right. So after 26 years of marriage, I'd had enough and got out of it. But I managed to get, a college degree and a master's degree. And so we have just become stronger with time. And my daughter chose not to get married on purpose, and she is a neurological radiologist. So we have grown throughout time.
There you go. That's wonderful. I mean, that's a lovely story. Thank you. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about the good and the bad, our histories and how we got here. Laura, can you go forward a couple of slides so we can hit I forgot to, this part. The brainstorming, just in your journals, if you are journaling along with this, post one sentence about how patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy show up in your life. And that, if you do that, that will help kind of guide your thinking along, and then as you go along this. And then invite 3 friends to watch this. If you buy the $9.99, invite a few friends over to watch the 30-minute, first chapter. It's a good watch. It's fun. And choose one local fight, book bans, abortion access, anti-trans bills, union drive, and commit to one concrete action this month. All right, Ms. Marta, you're up next.
Hi, yeah, this has been so interesting. And I admit I'm a little jealous because I feel like my mom was not this incredible role model of these things. In fairness, she was mentally unwell, and quite domineering. But I feel like she had very strong ideas. There are women who perpetuate this system themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I would place her. So when I look at my own life, I feel like some of the things that I consider resistant would look traditional on the outside, but they're how I feel about it on the inside, like really valuing friendship in my marriage and communication in my marriage. So someone might say, oh, you're married and this, that, and the other. That looks very traditional. But to me, it's really part of resistance, I think, is being able to really start to notice the influences we've had from men and from women. I would say there were silent things too, like Title IX happened when I was in high school. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really nice for those girls who want to do sports. But it never occurred to me that I might have been one of them had I been exposed to it with an expectation of an experience of the camaraderie of teams and all the great things. I felt very wistful about that over the years, not being a great athlete, but the benefits that come from sports were just unknown to me. And I think there are things that we just, if it's the water you're swimming in, it takes a long time to realize what you're assuming is natural. That's not natural. So, and I thought it was very interesting, some of the history. Thank you.
Thank you. And go ahead and raise your hand again if you have more to add. I will say just one thing. My mom was a little bit more of a controlling, domineering figure, married 4 times, not as good of a role model as my grandma. Okay. Like, so I get what you're saying. Like, it might have skipped a generation. Not that I don't love my mother. My mother's amazing. It's just she had issues. She had trauma from childhood that she never dealt with, and it affected her relationships. Now she'll say she's fine. Laura, you're up next.
Yes, back to there, starting my timer. Back to my family and my parents. I realized something very clearly after my mom died, and probably it was in my mind someplace, but not quite so clear. But my dad was the fun parent. I have a lot of memories of doing fun things with him. He was a lawyer. He worked hard. He did bring his work home and worked at the dining room table and stuff at both houses where we lived. But I don't have memories of my mother being fun. I remember doing chores, like working in the kitchen with her, not cooking, but dishes and putting things away. I remember her working hard around the house. She had 5 kids and she worked hard. I was sometimes a little parent also. I helped her out with the kids, being the oldest. But I really kind of resent that. And my dad didn't help her much. My dad did after they got divorced. He divorced my mom because stereotypical, sorry guys, in those days, he fell in love with one of the administrative assistants, known as a secretary in their law firm. Yeah, ditched my mom, tried to, I don't know. Yeah, it was a hard battle. But he helped his second wife a lot. I mean, he did, and I witnessed that, and that was great to see that he learned. But I wish my mom had benefited from that a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I love you both, Mom and Dad.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura. All right, Carolyn, you're up next.
Okay, so I tried to come on at 5 o'clock and it said it was locked. And
yes, we had an issue with the Zoom, but we figured it out not long after that. We apologize. We've had a few issues.
I was in Farmington and I was gonna put it on while I drive home, and so I couldn't put it on. And when I finally could put it on, you guys were discussing, and I'm like, oh, I missed everything. So
I'm so sorry, but don't worry. You can watch the recording. I promise.
Okay. And and I have the videos, but it sounds like she does some speaking or writing also. Is that the case?
She does. She has her own Substack,
Okay.
The Fine Print, which I highly recommend. And you gain access to it when you buy the $9.99.
Yeah.
And she's pretty fantastic, y'all.
Okay, and you were reading from that when I tuned in around, I guess it was around 5:25, 5:30.
No, actually, that was the first video.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard your voice. Okay, so anyway, my dad was strange. He had 3 sisters. So I don't know. He would do housework and stuff like that, and we could do whatever we wanted. Like my mom mowed the lawn. He expected all of us to go to college because he didn't get to go until GI Bill, but then he went and finished. And when my sister went, he made this crazy deal with her saying, if you get through the 4 years without getting married, I'll give you the same amount of money. And she did do it. And so then he was like, because he didn't think she would. He thought she'd get married. And so I don't know what his feelings were, but it didn't really transfer over to us that much, I don't think.
I'm sorry.
Transfer, like I didn't feel like boys are better. I was kind of jealous of my brother, though, so maybe I did think. Maybe I did think boys are better because I was jealous. He's younger than me. Is my time up? Okay.
That's all right. Actually, we are actually to the part where we go to the next slide. I'd like to end our sessions each week with talking about self-care, y'all. And here's why. Last year, if you didn't know, 3 people from the Coffee and Conversation crew had heart attacks. And one of them had a heart attack and then went to the hospital, got all fixed up, and then left the hospital and went to the Renee Good protest.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I love all y'all. I do. I love each and every one of you so much. And I love you so much that I don't want to meet any of you in a hospital bed or worse. So I am dedicated to self-care this year. Dedicated 100%, not just for myself, but for all of you. So what is self-care? It is the deliberate, proactive practice of taking action to improve or maintain your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Okay. And you don't have to do it all at once. It doesn't have to be some 100 and, like total 180 degree turnaround and complete clearinghouse of your entire way of doing things. That's not what we're doing. We're doing tiny little incremental changes that just spruce up your day or help you feel a little bit better, or maybe make someone else smile, because smiles are contagious. So this next week, I believe we are in week 10. I think we're in week 10. And if we're not, I'll fix it when I send it, or when I put it in the Substack.
This again would be the most fun. Or we could go to that Toscana.
We go to Seasons, or I made reservations.
So, as you can see, we are springing into Wellness March, and really what this comes down to is just being honest, because first of all, you're the only person who's going to see this, right? So anytime I ask you, like it asks you to do something like name your mood with 1 word and 1 color, jot them down without judging yourself. Be honest. If you feel like crap, put it in there. If you feel awesome, put it in there, but be honest, because that's the only way you're going to be able to gauge like what you need to do in order to get to good. And so the little things, lightening the load. We do this a lot, writing down 3 worries and circle the one that you can take a tiny step on today. We have a lot of things going on in our lives right now, but the biggest thing is not being able to figure out where we should go or what we should act on. Well, this just helps you do one little thing, and that. So hopefully these things, and if you don't go to Coffee and Conversation, I share these every day, but I also I will post these on Substack, and hopefully I want to hear what y'all do with your self-care, what is helping you get through what we're dealing with right now. Because man, some days, y'all, I feel like I just need a spa session, a drink, and some other stuff too, but that might be illegal. Just kidding. So what are you guys doing with your self-care? We can take I don't know. Do we have any more slides? I don't know if I have any more slides. But we can take them. If you have here, yeah. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your attention to this matter. You can take them down now so we can see everybody. Marta, go ahead. I think you can unmute yourself. Marta? Are you running away?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Let's see. I stretch a lot. That helps. But the other thing I do is I think coming to this is self-care for me. Going to coffee and conversation or unhappy happy hour, just that feeling of connection. And lately I hurt both my ankles and I can't drive. So I've been very housebound. And this is just such a wonderful way to meet with like-minded people that even when the news is terrible and I'm finding out things I didn't know already, I still I I feel bad about what's happening, but I also feel this lift of just connecting with people I like. So I consider this self-care.
I would agree with you. I think the network that we are creating is a part of our self-care. Supporting one another, no matter how far or how close together we are, is important for sure. Kathy, you're up next. By the way, sorry, real quick. Marta, my girl, busting both your ankles at the same time. I love you so much. And I'm praying for you. You are in my thoughts. I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this.
People have worse things. It'll get better. But this is part of my self-care right now because it's, isolating and lonely to be home. So this is I always appreciate it, but especially now.
Well, thank you. But goodness. All right. Kathy, you're up next.
I think you have to intentionally look for joy each day. Just look, even if it's looking out at the sky. I had a Christmas cactus that has just decided to bloom. So that was my big joy this week. And I exercise every day for 50 minutes solid, and it's aerobic, it's weightlifting, it's every conditioning, balance, it's everything you can think of, and it's online. And we are the same community that came together during COVID, and we did cooking nights, we did game nights, and so it's just a really unique organization. And I spend 2 nights a week with my grandkids, who are
That's
5
awesome.
and 8-year-old twins.
Oh my gosh. I bet they do give you a good, that's so joyful too. And keeping those community connections and keeping the family connections going. Yes, Kathy. Yes. Thank you.
And I am game grandma. I always bring a game to play. So
Very good.
you
Very good.
look for it and create it.
That's right. All right. Chris, you're up next.
Me?
Yes,
Okay.
you.
I'm not next on my screen. Melissa is.
Oh.
The what was it? Oh, I'm going to Florida tomorrow for a few days. So that will be self-care. The best part is that I'm going to visit a friend from my, like we were in brownies together and Girl Scouts and all this stuff. So I visit them at least twice a year, and I'm starting to reflect on how we're aging, and maybe, at some point trips aren't going to be possible. And so I'm really looking forward to this. I also join families, but that's just kind of a psychotic thing. The so like I know all the kids, and I know the in-laws and all that. But the other thing is coffee and conversation is sort of my support group. It's good to have people with like thoughts and near like beliefs. Yeah.
I completely agree, especially because I live in a red area where I can't find that kind of conversation like a lot walking out the door. It's very difficult to find.
Well, there aren't the people I run into who are I'll call them Republicans are are not that hostile. I mean, we're kind of worried about the no Kings 3, but the worst that happens when we're standing out there is somebody, shoots out some diesel exhaust.
Yeah.
So some
Super
real manly
fun.
thing. Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris. I appreciate you.
Thanks. Same here.
Dr. Melissa, I think we're going
Hi.
to end with you today.
Oh, okay. So I try to include self-care in my life, but it's always not enough, So, um, and I did just go to a 3-day conference that I had it was a CE conference on group psychotherapy. And one of the things that really inspired me about it is it talked about natural groups like ours. And of course, I thought about how salutary this is, and coffee and conversation. So it just made me extra aware of that and appreciative. What I do, I try to do every day where I am now. I have a window that if we open the slats on it, it looks like a postage stamp on a tree. Like that there's a whatever season it's that season is the tree season. And then I do yoga and physical therapy type exercises for 20 minutes to half an hour every morning. Could I do it for an hour and a half? That would be better. Yes. But will I only if I can really talk myself into it. And since I had not gone out a lot because of partly the conference, it was virtual. I went out for a walk yesterday, and when I came back, that same tree, there was a female cardinal sitting in the tree, chirping, making cardinal noises. So that was nice.
That is nice. It's beautiful. And
Thanks.
that is self-care. I mean, just little things and big things, big choices that you make. A decision to take that extra 5 minutes in the morning, for you, not to clean up after somebody else, not to do something for you. That is self-care, and it's not selfish, especially when we do what we do, y'all. When we do all the stuff that we do, taking care of ourselves is not selfish. It is radical resistance. It is healthcare. It is putting the oxygen mask on ourselves so that we can take care of everybody else around us. Anyway, me saying all that, guys, thank you so much for your grace and for dealing with all of the issues from the beginning. We'll have it all figured out by next week. As you know, the kinks, all of them on the front. When we start something new, we always have to have kinks, but we'll get it figured out. And Rebecca will be coming back someday. I promise, someday. Anyway, if you have any questions, you can email us at that email address, nwsofa.soup@gmail.com. And if you need anything else, y'all, see us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. At Coffee and Conversation. Otherwise, you can catch us at Thursdays, 5 p.m. Central Time for Sorting Soup, when we go through the week's news and try to figure out some action items. I will be sending some more things, putting some more things in the Substack because I don't think we email things anymore. So I will definitely put it in the Substack though. All right, y'all. Once again, thanks to everybody who raised their hand. Thanks to everybody who offered anything in the chat. Thanks to everybody who's just here. I'm just happy that y'all came and spent some time with us. This was just a wonderful, wonderful pot of soup. So thank y'all so much. And